I am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson number 5, Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. The lesson is entitled Complaints About Manna. Lesson text comes from Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 through 6 and 10 through 23. Related scriptures are Exodus 16, 1 through 8, 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 6, Mark 8, 1 through 9. The place is the desert of Paran. The time is about 1444 BC. With this week's lesson, we began a new unit of studies focused on God's faithfulness. The 4 texts we will be studying in this unit are all situations in which Israel was challenged to see God's faithfulness through the difficulties they were experiencing. Over the next weeks, we will learn much from Israel's grumbling, complaining, and doubting. Today we began in Numbers 11, 4 through 6, and 10 through 23. As Israel complained about manna, God provided for them. Today's aim, facts, to observe God's faithfulness to unfaithful people. Principle, to acquire the skill of seeing that God is faithful even through the severest difficulties in life. Application, to develop strategies that will facilitate our seeing God's faithfulness more consistently in both the good and bad days of life. Illustrating the lesson. This lesson reveals the amazing faithfulness of God to his chosen people. The Lord did not abandon Israel or the promises he had made to them, even though they complained and were ungrateful for his blessings. Practical points. 1. We must protect our hearts against worldly influences, lest we fall into ungratefulness. Numbers 11:4. 2. Satan will try to get us to look back fondly on our bondage to sin, but we must learn to love God and his righteous ways. Verses 5 through 6. 3. When we feel overwhelmed with responsibility, we must seek the Lord for strength. Verses 10 through 15. 4. The Lord has compassion on our weakness and will always provide what we need to do his will. Verses 16 through 17. 5. Persistent rebellion toward the Lord may cause him to give you over to your sinful desires. Verses 18 through 20. 6. God can supply all our needs without our help. Verses 21 through 23. Golden text. And the Lord said unto Moses, Is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. Numbers 11:23. Today we have 3 lesson outlines. The first is complaining against God. Numbers 11:4 through 6. The second is complaining to God. Numbers 11:10 through 15. And the third is God is the solution. Numbers 11:16 through 23. Introduction. Perhaps one of the strangest aspects of human behavior is the tendency to complain. It is strange in the sense that while virtually no one likes it, almost everyone does it. What makes complaining particularly strange is that it never accomplishes what we want. It does not improve anything, and it does not truly address what may be a valid list of wrongdoings. Grumbling against circumstances does nothing to change those circumstances. Complaining about things is not action. It just makes you and those around you miserable. It is impossible to complain and be grateful at the same time. Sometimes even God's family complains about or to God. We get upset or angry with how our lives turn out, and we gripe at him because we want something different than what he has provided. This week's lesson shows that complaining against God is never the right way to approach him. Complaining against God. Numbers 11:4. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? Verse 5. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons, and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. Verse 6. but now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. Distorting the Facts. Numbers 11, 4 through 5. So far in Israel's brief history following the Exodus from Egypt, God has supernaturally delivered them from the Egyptian army at the Red Sea, Exodus 14, and provided water, 15:22 through 27, 17:1 through 7, and food, chapter 16, for them. All this was done before they reached Mount Sinai. Over and over again, God showed himself to be faithful and loving to the children of Israel, yet time and again they complained against him. We now reach a point in the wilderness narrative where Israel had left Sinai on their journey to the Promised Land, Numbers 10, 11 through 12. Soon after leaving, however, they began to complain once again. There was nothing easy or cozy about traveling with such a multitude through the desert. Likewise, God never promised that life would be easy for his children today. Hard times have a way of bringing out the worst in us, and we can easily wind up guilty of losing faith and perspective. The people who comprise the mixed multitude, the same community the blaspheming man in last week's lesson was from, began to grumble against the Lord that they had no meat to eat. Their grumbling spread like wildfire throughout the Israelite community until it infested the entire camp. As the people gripped about how bad life was for them now, they lost all perspective and began to reflect on the lives they left behind in Egypt. Their long period of cruel bondage, Exodus 3:7 and 6:9, was suddenly remembered as a time of feasting. They longed for the food in Egypt, the fish they ate, as well as the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. The people began to have a strong craving for what they had in Egypt, so much so that it seemed they would have gladly returned there. Complaining about how bad things are is a trap, though. When we complain, we see how bad things appear to be as opposed to how great we think things used to be. There was nothing great about the Israelites' lives in Egypt. They were bound as slaves and forced to live under terrible conditions at the hands of ruthless slave masters. The people forgot all about all of that, however, and romanticized the past. This is the danger of complaining. It makes the past seem better than it was and blinds people to the blessings God is giving them at the present time. Exaggerating the Hardships, Numbers 11:6. Another problem with chronic complaining is that while it glamorizes what may have been a traumatic past, it exaggerates the troubles of the present and gives no hope for the future. It is never good to allow ourselves to settle into an attitude of constant griping because it does not allow us to see the goodness of God. The children of Israel greatly exaggerated their condition, stating that they were so hungry that their bodies were about to waste away to nothing. They did not remember their cruel working and living conditions in Egypt. Instead, they had a memory mirage of a smorgasbord of wonderful delicacies they had been available to them seamlessly all the times. Now, all they saw was the manna God provided for them that they were never truly grateful for. The complaint that manna was all they had to eat was a gross understatement of what God had provided for them. They had their own livestock with them, as well as the goods God had allowed them to bring with them out of Egypt. They were far from destitute, but their incessant whining prevented them from realizing that. It is not ironic that we tend to want what we do not have and despise what we do have. This predicament of the human condition that we deal with today is certainly nothing new. Complaining to God. Verse 10. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. Verse 11. And Moses said unto the Lord, Wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all these people upon me? Verse 12. Have I conceived all these people? Have I begotten them that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth the suckling child, unto the land which thou swearest unto their fathers? Verse 13. When should I have flesh to give unto all these people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. Verse 14. I am not able to bear all these people alone, because it is too heavy for me. Verse 15. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. Moses' displeasure. Numbers 11:10 through 11. The negativity that resulted from the constant complaining had now permeated the entire camp, as everyone was grumbling about how bad things had become and how much they had lost when they left Egypt. The people were now weeping openly, causing the Lord to be angry with them. It is important to understand that complaining against God will never please him. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking our feelings to the Lord or asking him for help. There is nothing wrong with trying to improve our circumstances when life gets hard. We must realize, however, that we will never get anywhere if we blame God for our hardships and struggles. We will never improve our situation if we regret coming to him in the first place and began longing to return our lives of sin. God loves us and wants to help us, but grumbling against him only pits us against him. Complaining all the time demonstrates a lack of faith, and God requires faith in order to please him. Hebrews 11:6. It is an exercise in futility to think we can help our situation by fighting against God, who has permitted the situation and is our only source of help and hope. Moses was also very displeased with what he was witnessing. As the leader of Israel, he often interceded on behalf of the people. In this case, however, he had grown very frustrated with both the people and the Lord. Unable to control the people, he took his frustrations to God. Under an extreme amount of stress, Moses questioned God's motives or wisdom in giving him this assignment. It is a bit reminiscent of his objection to being sent to Egypt in the first place, when God originally commissioned him. Exodus 3:13 through 4:17. Now he was out in the desert with a large group of ungrateful, whining people who never seemed to be satisfied with anything Moses or God did for them. The emphasis here is that Moses was actually blaming God for putting him in this situation, just like the people who were wishing they were back in Egypt. Moses seemed to be pining for the days when he was back tending sheep anonymously with his father-in-law. Moses' confusion, Numbers 11:12 through 13. Moses continued his complaint by pointing out that he did not give birth to these people. In effect, he was distancing himself from them and putting the blame for the whole mess on God. In his mind, Moses had done all he could do to effectively lead these people and even plead for them before God at times. No matter what he did, though, his best efforts were never good enough. Moses was at a point now where he threw up his hands in disgust and blamed God for his predicament. After all, it was God who gave birth to these nation of thankless rebels, not Moses. He even questioned God's right to ask him to lead this multitude. God was the one who had promised to bring them to their ancestors' homeland, but it was Moses who was bearing all the burden, at least in his estimation. Moses asked God where he was supposed to get food to feed all these people. It was not to God the people complained, it was to Moses. He did not know what to do. Stressful situations have a way of preventing us from seeing clearly and causing us to take our eyes off of God. It is in these times that we must stay devoted to prayer and remember in the darkness what we once learned in the light. Jesus promised to be with us always, Matthew 28:20, and the Lord has promised that he will never leave us or forsake us, Hebrews 13:5. Moses' despair, Numbers 11:14 through 15. As Moses continued his diatribe against God and his grievance about the assignment he had been given, he said something that was quite true. Even it came out in the form of a complaint. He stated that he was unable to carry these people by himself. The only problem with what Moses said was that it came out of a distorted view of reality. God never expected or asked him to lead the people by himself. What Moses forgot in all of this was that God was with him and was actually leading and providing for the people. God never left them. Although Moses felt completely abandoned by God, perception is not always reality, however. Moses, desperate for relief and seeing none, finally asked God to kill him. The only way for God to be merciful to him, according to Moses at least, was to put him out of his misery. God is the solution. Verse 16. And the Lord said unto Moses, Gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. Verse 17. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. Verse 18. And say thou unto the people, Sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and ye shall eat flesh, for ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, Who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat. Verse 19. Ye shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days. Verse 20. But even a whole month, until it come out at your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that ye have despised the Lord which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, Why came we forth out of Egypt? Verse 21. And Moses said, The people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen, and thou hast said, I will give them flesh, that they may eat a whole month. Verse 22. Shall the flocks of the herds be slain for them to suffice them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? Verse 23. And the Lord said unto Moses, Is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. Calling on 70 elders, Numbers 11:16 through 17. After listening to Moses' complaint, God told him to gather 70 elders among the leaders of Israel and to bring them to the tabernacle. God told Moses that he would meet with these 70 elders and give them the same spirit that was in Moses. This is a reference to the Holy Spirit, who up to this point had endowed only Moses with power. They would assist Moses in leading the people and would be empowered by the same Spirit who empowered him. A call to accountability. Numbers 11:18 through 28. The Lord then told Moses to tell the people to sanctify or consecrate themselves. They were to prepare themselves spiritually to see what the Lord will do the next day. The people had asked where they could get meat to eat, and God made it clear it would come from him. They had longed for Egypt, where they claimed they had plenty to eat. They would soon regret their words. Be careful what you ask for. Numbers 11:20b through 21. God told Moses in very vivid language that the people would be eating meat until it came out of their nostrils, and they loathed it. It is a terrible mistake to turn the goodness of God into something bad and to think that returning to wickedness will bring relief and pleasure. God would take the thing the people wanted the most and turn it into something they detested. Moses retorted that the population numbered 600,000 footmen, verse 21. And God was saying that he would give them meat for a month. This reflected Moses' own unbelief. He was thinking that this was an incredible promise even for God. The number he cited referred to men 20 years old and older who were able to go to war. Exodus 12:37, Numbers 1:45 through 46. The total number of Israelites may have been well in excess of 2 million. God's hand is not too short to provide. Numbers 11:22 through 23. Moses argued that even if they were to slaughter all their livestock, it still would not be sufficient to feed the people for a month. Even all the fish in the sea would not be enough to cover such a great task. God responded to Moses by asking him if the Lord's arm was too short to provide what he promised. We can rest assured that God can and will do what he has promised. The Apostle Paul understood that God would provide all his needs, which is quite a statement considering he wrote those words from prison. Philippians 4:19. The source of God's provision for us is Christ. He is our sufficiency and is everything we need. Questions. 1. What was the specific complaint of the people at the start of this passage? 2. In what way was the people's memory of life in Egypt distorted? 3. Why is constant griping a dangerous thing for us? 4. What did Moses' distress cause him to question? 5. In what way did Moses blame God for his predicament? 6. Why did Moses ask the Lord to take his life? 7. How did God respond to Moses' complaint? 8. How did God assure Moses that he would have help? 9. What hard lesson would God teach in meeting the people's desire for meat? 10. What did Moses' reply to the Lord reflect? This concludes the Sunday School lesson for Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. Thank you for listening. God bless.